All right, can I get your name and will you spell your last name, please?
My name is Karl Rakow, Karl with K. Last name is Rakow.
Mr. Rakow, were you in the room previously when I went through the penalties for perjury?
Yes, I was.
And do you understand what perjury is?
Yes, I do.
Being advised of the potential penalties for perjury, do you promise to tell the truth in this case today?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, go ahead.
Your Honor, Commissioners, thank you for your time. And thank you for, when we had the other meeting, I'm extending another one to have more of the public heard. And again, mine will be short and sweet. And that's something new beyond what I said. At the City Commission, County Commission, all the zoning, they start out with statements in general, of concern of the health, safety, and welfare of Burleigh County residents and Bismarck residents. There is information out there that gives accurate incidents that have happened before. The Sartasia, just going over that quickly, the plume study of the Danbury pipeline, they have the size and that of what it is. So what I have here is the Burleigh County map and the plume as Attorney Bakke mentioned too, is 24 miles long. This plume, this is what that was. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of figures, the safety issue. I mean, I live in Burn Creek Valley, 5 miles north of Costco, and if this happened here, this 24 miles would encompass all of Bismarck with northwest winds, which seems to be the winds of where I live. But if the winds were coming from the southeast, and this were further over here, it would go over the schools we're talking about, go over the hospitals. So the bottom line is, in Sartasia, with the size of the community, and you obviously were there when the fire marshal was there from explaining the situation of the three of them and not doing what they had to do, and that would be impossible in Bismarck. In 1986, in Lagos, Cameroon, there was a natural explosion of the CO2 that went 16 miles. And there were 1,720 people that died and 3,500 animals. And that was 16 miles. So this is 24 miles, and this is going over Bismarck, I think it was 72,000, Mandan 26, over 100,000 people. The time that, again, we've heard this, after 6-8 minutes, you get woozy. I mean, this is serious stuff. Whether it's Summit, whether it is Bismarck, we cannot get emergency services if something like this would happen. The hospitals could have handled the COVID crisis. What if this were here and people could get in? How could they possibly handle it? To have this pipeline running just does not, as I said, does not make sense. So sometimes visuals are more important than numbers. I mean, this to me, this concerns me. And I believe the pipeline should be south. Obviously, people there would be affected, but certainly not 90,000 people potentially here. So emergency and could potentially get to a smaller group of people. So just thank you for your time. And this is serious. This is life-threatening. I mean, a plume that was smaller than what was in Sartasia. 1,700 people.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bender?
No questions.
Mr. Pelham?
Thank you, sir. I'm just trying to understand how you created the room that you have on the map.
Well,
How did you go about that, if you could just describe that?
Okay, well, the graph on this is 1 mile to this distance. And from the Danbury pipeline and the studies that were done at that time, you know, they had, and so this is modeled after the size of what they said that plume was. And so and this is 24 miles, and this is as close to conceptually what a plume like this would be. And my concern is it will be going over, no matter where it is, you know, our community.
If the hypothetical, on the proposed line, hypothetically, there's a breach, you just move that left or right or down or up, and that's where you're saying the plume would depend on the direction of the wind.
Correct. You know, I mean, that is the bottom line. I mean, if the wind were absolutely from the south here, well, we go up to Wilton.
Sure.
I mean, but those are things that we don't know what it's going to be. You could also ask questions, well, what was the temperature in Sartatia? What was the temperature here when it had, all of those things are somewhat variables. But the bottom line is where this is running through the second largest city in the state. All the testimony of we can only go east or north, just logic says, why would we put that at risk? Property values, last comment I'll make, of a family friend who in fact is a legislator in South Dakota fighting this in Sioux Falls. When we lived in Sioux Falls in the late 78, I was 6 houses from the cornfield, the southeast part of town. Now Sioux Falls, Harrisburg was like 12, 15 miles away. The Sioux Falls suburbs are almost out there. And this family, they're very large farmers, and they were going to try to sell a piece of outlying property, and they got farmland that close to Sioux Falls is very expensive. Potential development land is like it would be here. They got 2 lowball offers on that property. That was it, because they had to disclose that the pipeline route was going through that property. So there is an impact. Any other questions?
I do not have any other questions.
Mr. Jordy, any questions?
And you were just referring to the Peterson Ag and Karl Lenz family?
Yes.
Yes, and that there was actually a no sale because the bids were so low on where the pipeline would be.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bakke, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Chrisman?
I'm not sure how much of a difference it makes. I'm still studying that, but are you aware that the makeup of the CO2 mixture at Sartatia is significantly different than what is in this case?
No, I'm not. But just the fact that CO2, we've all heard the numbers of how much a body can withstand before there's an impact. You know, I mean, these...
To bring it up that the comparisons might not be apples to apples.
And even if they're not apples to apples, they're a little bit different, it is still something with exposure as an effect. And why have them running through where Bismarck is developing? I mean, that just... to me is just, you know, logical, and it's not just another pipeline, as everyone said, it's carrying a totally different substance.
Great. Commissioner Hogan-Hoffert?
Thank you for your testimony. I have no questions.
Mr. Dawson?
No questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Rakow.